Well, welcome back to the Rooted and Free Sisterhood podcast. This is episode 2. We hope that you were completely enthralled with the first one, and maybe you just bailed. It was like 39 minutes, and that's completely okay.
Really? Oh
Yeah,
my
it was.
word.
It was a
We were
long
having a
one.
good time.
I mean, we enjoyed ourselves. If you did not, so sorry. So sorry. But if
Why
you're
wouldn't
here,
we?
that means you came to give us another chance, and that's good.
People do
So,
like train wrecks, Joy.
I know. Right.
So,
But here we are. We're going to laugh our way through this. Okay, so at the end of the last one, we said we would talk a little bit about our relationship because we weren't super close growing up.
no,
And this is raw. We have not really talked about this. We haven't, so I don't know what's coming out of my mouth, and I certainly don't know what's coming out of Jenny's mouth.
I don't either.
but but we're just gonna see how it goes. Okay, so we we were just really different growing up.
Yeah.
I was the baby, and so I just led this really happy life in my bubble. Like I've said, I just was probably, well, I know I was immature and just, I didn't concern myself with what was going on at home necessarily. And Jenny was the middle child. She was the oldest daughter. And so you can speak for yourself. I think you assumed a lot of responsibility that I didn't. In my opinion, you were very serious at the time.
Really?
You
Oh
were
my word. Oh.
you were very responsible, and I wasn't really interested in that. Anyways, go ahead, Jenny. What do you have to share?
Well, I just remember being almost worried about stuff. I worried about if dad was worried about the church, if mom was worried about things, I worried about that. If there was issues in the family, I worried about I wanted people to get along.
You did. You
And
you were that person.
I did. I did. And so a lot of times, even as a child, I learned it was better to not to argue, not to bring up your wants if it wasn't really
Mhm.
good because it was easier to I remember trying to smooth things out before they became a problem. Get
Mhm.
stuff done. I wanted you and John to be good so that there weren't issues, if there was
Sorry.
tension. But we shared a room most of our lives
Yeah,
together growing up, but we really weren't friends necessarily. We bugged each other. We were different.
yeah,
I didn't keep the room clean, you did. That
yeah.
was an
That
issue.
did bug me.
Yeah,
We were just so different.
we
Yeah,
were. We were.
yeah.
Um, and just different stuff. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
it's kind of funny.
You did carry a lot of the weight of our family, and we'll talk more about that another time. But, you know, there was a lot of dysfunction in our
Yeah,
home, and dad was a pastor, but things stemming from their past, and more so probably mom than dad, it did affect the way that our family ran. And so, I mean, I think we did. I even remember just kind of feeling like I needed to walk on eggshells. I probably as I became older and more aware of things.
right.
Um, yeah, I think there was just that struggle. I mean, I didn't think it at the time, but probably now, like I wanted to have fun. Like
Yeah,
I wanted to have that life that I imagined in my head, and
yeah,
the life that I imagined that my friends had. The
right.
reality wasn't that at home, and you were the reality queen, and I was not at the time. You know?
Well, I don't know about that, but well,
And
it's like yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, go.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I remember I was maybe in 4th grade, and one time we got taken to Awana at a different church. I loved that time. It was wonderful because I loved the Bible verses, I loved the people, the kids, and everything. But Awana, you were supposed to bring 25 cents a week.
Mm.
And I knew that we were struggling financially.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I felt like that would push us over the edge. So if I remember correctly, I didn't tell mom or dad or anything. I just said I didn't want to go because I
Mm.
didn't want to have to ask for 25 cents a week, you know,
Yeah.
and I felt like that was selfish and just we had other things we needed our money for. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. That was a big responsibility you were carrying,
Well,
know.
looking back now, if I would have talked to them, they would have been like, "No, that's fine."
Yeah.
But I just didn't wanna make waves, so I just decided not to go, and I remember being disappointed because I really wanted to.
Yeah.
But
Well,
anyways, I
yeah,
don't
that's so
remember whose
interesting.
church it was or anything, it just obviously wasn't ours.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. So, why do you think that you felt like you had to carry the family, you know? Like, where do you think that came from?
My security was in the family being intact,
Mhm.
and it felt like things were breaking up, and that was my way of keeping things together.
Yeah, wow.
Is
Yeah.
is what it was. I knew that God cared and that he could help us, but I also knew that sometimes you sacrifice for good things.
Mhm.
So, to me, the family intact was priority. So, I didn't ask to do things that I thought might bring tension.
Yeah.
Or there were times where I felt like I needed to be home to keep an eye on things
Yeah.
because things were happening and I didn't want to leave because something bad might happen while I was gone.
Did
That was my
you
perception.
did you feel like you needed to protect me?
A little bit.
Yeah.
More emotionally. But I
Uh-huh.
do remember one time where someone was mad and it trust me, it was not abuse, it was not gonna get out of hand, but I knew someone was mad and you were gonna get a spanking, and I
Uh-huh.
remember screaming and saying, "No, give it to me," because I was
Wow.
afraid it was gonna be we were
Yeah.
pretty young then, so that might have just been a typical child thing or something, but I do
Yeah.
remember at times I wanted to keep you in line so that there wouldn't be more tension at
Mhm.
times, even as a child.
And how
At
did that go, Jenny? I was a stinker.
well
I know.
well,
I-
you didn't need your 2 and a half years older sister telling you what to do. I get it,
Right.
you
Right.
know,
And I
but
probably did resent that a little bit,
I'm
just
sure, and you
because
should have.
I wanted to live in my happy bubble and not be.
Well,
Um,
and I'm not saying my perception was always right,
mhm.
but the
Yeah.
older we got, the more tension there was.
Mhm.
And so my what I wanted to do was just keep the tension down as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you know to be true now? Because that was your perception back then, that it
Mhm.
was up to you to hold it all together. But like now looking back, like, was that true? You know, was
No,
it?
I did not need to hold it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I'd had somebody to talk to, somebody more spiritually mature, emotionally mature,
Yeah.
but you also had this perception of dad's a pastor.
Yeah.
A lot of our friends went to our church or had connections, so his job was tied in with who he was. So you didn't want to say anything
Mm-hmm.
bad as a child and get him in trouble with his job. So you just kept quiet and you worked on it. Now, for one thing, I know mom and dad dearly loved us.
Yeah. Oh
Their
yeah.
problems in the end was more their relationship. They
Yeah.
loved us, but I remember carrying the weight of trying to carry and specifically mom's happiness, because mom
Mm-hmm.
loved being a mother,
She
and so
did.
she
She
really
did.
did, and I know she loved us. They
Yeah.
sacrificed for us
Mm-hmm.
and everything, but as things got just more involved with them and other things, the weight carrying of keeping an eye on things and carrying their happiness, I think for all of us became heavier.
Yeah. And that we could devote a whole other episode to being a pastor's family, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think in some ways, maybe, well, I don't know actually if it's changed now. And,
I think it has.
but
I
back
do.
then, like, it kind of reminds me of that movie, The Firm, where it's all about like, like the
Person.
appearances,
Yeah.
And so, God bless if you have if you have humans that are part of the, pastor's family, and especially if they're kids, like, they're
Yeah.
it's not going to be perfect,
No, no,
And
no.
yeah.
I
And so
remember being at a basketball game. I think it was in Washington, but we were at a basketball game. I think it was, and I was in the bleachers sitting by Dad and someone else from church, a man from church on the board, and he corrected me on something and challenged me on something. Well, you shouldn't do that because blah 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 blah. And I don't even remember Dad's response, but I remember
yeah.
thinking, why is he? I wasn't, if I remember right, I wasn't disrespectful, but he was telling me what I needed to think or something like that. I
Oh,
don't,
interesting.
and I just remember, but I do think mom and dad, and I'll just say this and we can move on, but
Yeah.
even though they tried to parent us with their idea of parenting, not what we
Yeah.
had to be as a pastor's kid.
I do
They worked
agree.
really hard. I don't think they were like, well, I don't want to do this, but we better because of the church. They didn't do
Yeah.
that. So it
No,
was more
I
us
don't think
feeling the
so.
weight of everybody else's expectations, not
Right.
from mom and dad, not from
Yeah.
mom.
I do agree with that. They never
Absolutely.
let other people's opinions,
Nope. Nope.
change their what they felt like they needed to do, the right thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So then when I was a freshman and you were a senior, is that when we moved back to
Yeah.
Arizona? Or yeah,
Yeah.
because I
Because I
was
went to school a month in Washington and then moved to
okay,
Phoenix.
yeah. So
Yeah.
then you finished out and then you went away to college.
But I almost didn't because
Yeah.
I was afraid the family because things were pretty tense by then.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
felt like I needed to be there. I wasn't sure it was good for you to be
Mm-hmm.
the only kid there and stuff.
Yeah.
But thank God I did.
And then you just did you just go for one semester or did you go
Yeah.
for,
I
and
came
then you
home
came
for
home?
Christmas break and Dad at that time, if I remember correctly, was starting the Phoenix church
Uh-huh.
and was he working elsewhere and he lost
Mm-hmm.
his job. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew that, and I think there was some issue with how much she had gotten on disability because of her knee and was
Yeah,
having to pay something back. And so finances were really bad.
they
And I
were,
thought,
yeah.
and I loved Fort Wayne Bible College, just
Mm-hmm.
had a blast, but I knew I couldn't go back there
Yeah.
and go to college when the family was falling apart.
Yeah.
So I stayed home the next semester. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And so, I mean, we just kind of led different lives because you were
we
being
did.
responsible and I was in high school and,
You know
you
what? I
know,
don't remember you as being irresponsible or something because you
no,
were aware of the tension too
yes,
and
yeah.
stuff.
At that point, I was just trying to live my best high school life, and then,
Yeah,
with sports, and then I got jobs, and honestly, I did keep really busy because it was easier to do that than to deal with stuff at home, So I worked, quite a bit, and then I was in
you did
sports full time,
so
and
much.
I
Yeah,
did, and I think it was just because it was those other things felt safer to me than,
yeah,
home at that
yeah.
point. Okay, so back
But
to
I
our
do want to make
relationship.
it again, I want to make it clear. We were not abused. We were
No, no,
not,
no, 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 no.
we were just, there was tension and the tension increased as the years went on with things.
Yes.
But we
And
were
you know
not
what?
abused
At
and
some point, we'll get into
yeah,
some of that stuff too. Yeah.
yeah.
But
I
no,
just
we
want
were
to make that
loved and
clear. Yeah.
absolutely. Yes, very
Because look
much
how we
so.
turned out. We're wonderful. So
Yes.
So,
So we did end up working at the same place. We worked at Swenson's. Do you remember that? Ice
the
cream
brown
place.
outfits with the
I
brown
loved
and
those
orange
brown
lights.
outfits.
I did too.
They were so good. Yep.
I did
And
too.
yeah, so that
Yeah.
was kind of the later, like my high school and stuff.
Right.
And then in my senior year, I was just in a not good relationship. And right before graduation, I broke that off and I felt so free. And you came home from college, and so we had what we lovingly call our summer of irresponsibility.
Awesome.
And that, I think that was when we finally just really connected.
It was. We
We
just,
spent the entire summer together all
yeah,
the time, and we just had so much fun. And that was a real turning point in our relationship. I think, just there was
yeah.
some growth and
I,
maturity, and
I mean, I think that was the first time I went to a movie that wasn't like, I think we went to a movie, The Hiding Place, when it
hmm
came out, but I hadn't been to a movie. And
yeah,
we saw Arthur
I
and
remember that.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was a
Yeah.
double feature.
Oh, wow.
That
I
was
don't
the
even
first
remember
time,
that.
and we had so much fun. We
Yeah.
started going to movies.
We
Yeah,
did. We ran out of movies to see
we
because
did.
we didn't go see our movies at that point. We just saw, whatever we could see. But we
Yeah.
did that, and we
Was was it that summer where maybe it wasn't. There was a time where we'd been out with the youth group and we were supposed to be home at, I forget if it was midnight or 1 or something, and youth group was across town in Phoenix, mind you, and so
right.
we raced across town.
Mm-hmm.
I think we pulled in the driveway. I'm not even sure we turned the car off because we were bound and determined
Oh,
we were not gonna be
curfew.
late.
Yeah.
Yeah, curfew, and we ran in the house and into mom and dad's bedroom, and literally they had one of those clocks that would flick
Yeah.
over the minute. It flicked over 12 as we burst in. I think mom and dad both burst out laughing because I guess they've been laying there going, "Do you think they're gonna make it on time?" And we were like, "Oh, good, we make it. Now we'll go turn off the car," if I
Right.
remember right.
Oh,
So,
that was fun. Those were fun times.
yeah,
Yeah, we did. We had a lot of fun. And youth group was an important part of our lives.
yes,
When we lived in Washington and then back in Arizona again.
yeah,
Yeah. And like, you know, for me, this is going a whole other direction, but we don't have to go far that direction. But I look at the other people in our lives because, like you said, we knew mom and dad loved us. They had
mhm,
struggles. They had struggles in their marriage. They had struggles emotionally, but then there were people that came along, like parents of our friends, youth
absolutely.
leaders that like stepped into those places that,
Yep,
I don't know how it all would have ended up had they not been so, nurturing and loving, and so it made me think too as our kids started growing up then like I want to be that too because you never know what people's home lives are like.
no, and we from them got a nice glimpse into there can be a godly marriage.
Yeah,
You
right.
could know all the verses, but that doesn't necessarily translate into what your marriage is or
Right.
your
Yeah.
family life. And yet, seeing it played out, even if it wasn't,
Yeah.
and we're not talking perfection, but when you're
Mm-hmm.
dreading to go home a lot of the time,
Right.
that
Yeah.
says something's not right,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? But
Yeah.
at the same time, mom and dad were involved in our school activities. I think the
They
kids
were.
adored dad because he was like a whatever,
Mm-hmm.
scorekeeper, timekeeper
Yeah.
and stuff. And people loved them at school. So back
That
then you didn't say anything. So nobody
right.
knew. Nobody
And
knew.
that's just it. Like there can be more than one thing going on. There was a lot of
Absolutely.
dysfunction at home, but we also knew that we were loved and supported. They came to every activity that they could
Absolutely.
possibly come to. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
like we knew we were loved and we knew that we were
Yes.
celebrated. So yeah, there's just lots of different things at play. As Daniel Tiger says, you can have more than one feeling at the same time.
Well, thank you for that, Daniel.
Right?
Yeah. No, it is true. And I
Yeah.
think that helps the more you mature as you step back and look at the entire picture, not just
Hmm.
what you were feeling in the moment. You do see both the good and the
Yeah.
bad were there at the same time, and it wasn't all one or the other.
Right.
Sometimes you can focus on the good. Maybe that's more in a romantic type relationship, and you
Hmm.
don't see the other side
Yeah.
because you're
Right.
focusing on one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's just like grief and joy can go hand in hand. It's like
absolutely.
there's so many, it's complicated at
Right,
times.
right.
But yeah, and
So,
that was the nutshell of our relationship. We
yeah.
had yeah,
But
just
that summer was where it really took off,
it did.
where
Yeah.
we connected. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
and there weren't cell phones back then. If there had been, I have a
Mhm.
feeling after that, even when I went back to college or whatever, we would have been texting all the time and everything, but you had
Yeah.
to write letters, so
Yeah.
that just didn't happen,
Isn't
but
that weird that like we grew
oh
up
my
without
word.
cell phones? And like sometimes I'm hard on myself for not knowing like all the information, that would have been helpful in raising kids and medical
Yeah,
issues and that kind of stuff. But like we just didn't have access to it, which is such a
yeah,
crazy thing. Yeah, and
yeah,
communications. Back in the early days when Todd drove truck, you just kind of said goodbye and hoped that he found a payphone at some point,
yeah, yeah.
because there weren't cell phones. So,
It's
anyway,
crazy to think of. Yeah,
yeah. And so then, yeah, from that summer on, then, God has just really grown us. We've been
yeah,
through a lot of hard times. You've been through hard times. I've been through hard times.
yep.
And we don't see eye to eye on everything, believe it or not.
Probably not. We
But
don't, but that
but you don't need to. I
doesn't.
don't even agree with myself all the time.
"What are you doing?" "I don't know."
There's Jenny.
Oh.
There you go. I knew it would come out. But yeah, and so God is just really, He has blessed us with a really sweet relationship. And for the past 30 years, we have been able to live close to each other. So for those who
Yeah,
don't know, Jenny and I live about, I don't know, 45 minutes away from each other,
yeah,
roughly, something like that. And so, um, when in mom's final years, we spent a lot of time together. Well, we lived
yes.
in the same town for, I don't know,
Oh,
20
what?
years, about
Okay.
20 years. And then we moved, half an hour away, 45 minutes. But then when mom was alive and living back here, we spent a lot of time together with mom on a
Yeah,
weekly basis. And then since she has passed, we try to have lunch dates and try to get together with we can but stay in frequent contact, and very thankful for our relationship, our sisterhood, but then our friendship that has just been very precious. And there's nothing like a sister or a
oh,
sibling that that just they have your back and they're gonna listen and support and do what they can to help.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the fact because you live there, I live here, both and we're involved in our family's life, we're involved
Mm-hmm.
in church and ministry lives, and so,
Mm-hmm.
yep, our lives are busy, but we don't have to. It's not that, we don't have to be careful around each other. We
Yeah.
don't have to, "Oh, I better contact her or she's gonna be mad," or something like
Yeah.
that.
Right.
We both
Yeah.
but on the other hand, we also know even if we hadn't talked for a month, if you're like you could call or text and say, "Pray for so and so," and you don't have to give
Yeah.
details and the other person's on it, and when
Yeah, exactly.
if you can give details, fine. If you can't give details, doesn't matter because
Yeah,
we know who we're praying to, and he knows what needs to be prayed. So,
exactly. Yeah, and that is a really sweet relationship. And aside from the sister relationship too, like, I know you have friends in your life that you're close to and you
yeah,
have the same kind of relationship, and I do too. And that is it's just a sweet thing when especially when you have that common bond of, that relationship with the Lord, and the
yeah,
way that he just brings those relationships together. So Thank you, Lord,
Absolutely.
for sisterhood. Thank you, Lord,
Yeah.
for, that we can be friends and
Yes.
share a history together and lots of laughs. Lots more to come. But
Yep.
anyways, I don't know. Do you have anything else to share?
Nothing's coming to mind specifically at the moment other than my room is still messy. But other than
Well, mine's not
it's a
super
few
clean either.
years older and yet some things haven't changed.
There is no judgment here. Boy, I mean, that's definitely something that I've learned over the years too is, you don't know what people are going through
Oh,
unless they tell you. You might get a snapshot into somebody's life and you may want to make a determination about their life based on that, but we really have no clue, so there's
I
lots of grace.
I I think the time that got driven home to me, there was another family we were friends with, and I was talking with the mom somewhere, and there was a mark on her face. And I said, because we knew the family, and I just brazenly said, "Oh, that's what you get for talking back to your husband," or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And she smiled and everything. We went on. And it was a few months later I found out
That,
actually she'd been hit by her husband, shot
yeah,
by
I
her
remember
husband. And
that.
yeah, and that was a turning point for me to you because I thought, wait, we know them.
Yeah,
We know them,
yeah,
and but the relationship turned bad in a really bad way. And
yeah,
but that was an eye opener for me even before I became an adult, as you like you said,
yeah.
you don't know
You don't
what
know.
someone, and especially if somebody you know really well and they change or they
Yeah.
say something that normally you're like, they wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
There may be something where that has
Yeah.
driven them out of who they are.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to grow and to just learn some of those lessons and, you know,
Well, what always comes to me is God is faithful and his faithfulness doesn't depend on mine. And I appreciate
thankfully.
that, but I know, but I want to, hopefully, I will, God knows how I failed, but hopefully I will keep trying to be the person that he wants because he's given me so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there for people that need the hand up because I think
Yeah.
we all need a hand up at times. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's other times we can give a hand out to someone.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he definitely has put people in my lives in the times where you weren't sure you could go on, but I want to make sure my eyes aren't on myself so that
Don't
I
make me
can
cry,
see.
Jenny. Don't
Sorry.
make me
And
cry.
I just I really do see the times how God has loved me and supported me even when it was hard, and I wanna make absolutely sure instead of going, "Phew, glad that's over, I'm moving on with my life," that I'm
Yeah.
going, "Who else may be in that place that you want me to watch for them, God?" Because He certainly, and it's not always a huge amount of people. It may be
Yeah.
one
Mm-hmm.
person, but that person who knows you and knows what you're going through and even maybe how you've reacted, which hasn't been the best, and they still choose to walk beside you and say, "You're
Yeah.
not going anywhere. God is
Yeah.
here." And I have said that to people about, I don't understand. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but what I know is you can trust God.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. That was good. Yep. All right.
okay.
Well, that's a little insight into our relationship and our
Yeah.
history. Yes, so we want to hear from other sisters, biological or not. We want to
Yes.
share your stories too. So please
Yes.
reach out to us. I'll put my email down below, because we would love to share your story because God brings us together in relationships for a reason. So I think that's
Yep.
it for today.
Let's
All right.
talk.
Thank
Okay.
you.
See you later.